everyone, my name is Chloe, and today I'm here with my second half of June wrap up. So if you watched the first half of June, it was kind of a rough start to the month for me, and I'm really happy to say the second half has been much better. And so I was thinking about that, and I was like, was I just not picking great books in the first half of the month or what? And I don't know. I don't have an answer. But I also did have a lot of anxiety at the beginning of the month because we had a trip coming up. My daughter had her second birthday. Like, we just had so much going on, and it was all very just boom, boom, boom. No time to even think. I also still am not feeling great. I'm 24 weeks pregnant and I'm still not feeling great. So everything feels that much harder. It's hot, which makes everything 1,000 times harder. I don't know. I'm saying the first half of June was kind of rough for me in personal life. And so then I'm wondering, how much does my personal life affect my enjoyment of my reading? And I would say none, because I read for escape. I read at down times. And if I'm having a super anxious or ramped up or busy time, I typically don't read as much during the day. It's all early morning or late night. And so I'm not reading amongst the chaos. I'm reading once it's calmed down or before it ramps up. So I wouldn't say it affects it that much, but it's just interesting and something I'm going to kind of pay attention to in the future months of when I'm having really busy, really anxious seasons. Is my reading inevitably going to be lower? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on that topic. But like I said, second half of June, much better. So let's get into the stats. So I read 15 books from the 16th to the 30th. The average length was 276 pages. So you will see that I kind of got into graphic novels just because I love graphic novels, especially when I'm feeling physically slumpy. Graphic novels knock me out of that so quickly. And also, when I did my video about our summer reading challenge for the library around here, one of the prompts is to read a graphic novel. And so I kind of asked you guys, what are some graphic novels you'd recommend? So I checked a bunch of those out and got some from the library. So graphic novels definitely played into this. We also read a few middle grades that you'll see later. So 276 pages was the average length. I read 4,138 pages, which ironically averages out to 276 pages per day. So that works out good. I read 9 novels, 4 chapter books, and 2 graphic novels. 10 of those were adult, 1 was young adult, and 4 were middle grade. And then as far as the star ratings go, I had read 1 2-star, 3 3-stars, 3 3.5 stars, 5 4 stars, 1 4.5, and 2 5 stars. 2 5 stars never happens for me. In fact, I was looking at my 5-star reads, and I have not had many this year at all. So you will get to see what those 5 stars were. So the average rating was 3.73, which I think is the highest period I have had this year, maybe. I read 5 off my shelf, 10 from somewhere else, 6 from from where all those are from, and how I read them. I read 6 from my library, 3 from NetGalley, 2 from Hoopla, 2 from Libby, 1 from Kindle Unlimited, and 1 that was just on my shelf. I read 7 physically, 4 on audio, 3 e-arcs, and 1 ebook. I read 5 new releases and 10 backlists, which I feel like is pretty good. I definitely like to tend more backlist, but I also have such bad FOMO, especially when I get on NetGalley. I have really bad FOMO, so it feels good to me. And then as far as genres go, I read 5 mystery thrillers, 3 romance, 3 magical realism, 2 contemporary, 1 women's fiction, and 1 nonfiction. So let's just get into the books. As always, I'm going to go in the order that I read them, and I'll tell you a little bit about each book, and we'll go from there. So the first one was Karen's Witch by Ann M. Martin, and this is the first in the Babysitter's Club Little Sisters books. So I, as a child, never read the Little Sisters books. And that's because my older sister collected the Babysitter's Club books. She's 9 years older than me. And so she was beyond that. And I don't know, she just we had an extensive collection of the Babysitter's Club books. So I never really felt the need to go into the Little Sisters, I guess. But now my daughter, I don't feel like she's quite there and ready for the Babysitter's Club books, but she is ready for the Little Sisters because they have lots of pictures. Especially this newer release of them. They have a lot of pictures and they're really great. And Karen is 7 in them. And so it's definitely the lower end of middle grade. But the writing, I would say, is not dumbed down by any means. And these are there's a fair amount of words. So I gave it 4 stars. This is about Karen, who is Christy's little sister, stepsister. If you know Christy she's the one that is the president of the Babysitters Club. It's her stepsister. And she thinks that there's a witch living next to her at her dad's house. And so this is a good discussion of divorce and living with separated parents. She talks a lot about how she's got a house with her mom and a house with her dad and kind of how they navigate that. But she is trying to spy on this neighbor who she thinks is a witch. And she does some things. She learns some lessons. She gets her friends kind of in on it. And she's very paranoid about this witch. And it was really cute. Also, if you guys have any knowledge of where to find the original prints of the Little Sisters books, let me know, because I have scoured everywhere. And the cheapest I can find them is like $7 each. And they're like 100 pages. There's well over 100 of them. So I'm not going to pay $7 each. But if you know of anywhere that I can get them cheaper, please let me know, because we are loving them. So next I read The Cradle Will Fall by Mary Higgins Clark, and I read this one with Tara from Buzzwords Books, and I gave this one 3 stars. So this is about an OB doctor who is not the purest of intentions, I would say. And then also a policewoman who she gets in a fender bender, and she is in the hospital overnight, and she thinks she sees this OB doctor putting a body in the back of his car. However, she has definitely got some hospital phobias and that kind of stuff. So she doesn't know if she really saw it or if she imagined it, but she thinks she really did. And then somebody kind of winds up dead. So we're trying to figure out what's going on. Was the doctor involved? Did she see what she thought she saw? And we get perspectives of both the doctor and our investigator. And I liked this book, but it definitely slogged a little bit in the middle. And the whole reason I've been reading Mary Higgins Clark lately is because of Tara from Buzzwords Books. She has talked about her a couple times, and it's just kind of lit that reminder in my head of oh, I used to really like her. Let me read her more. And Tara said she thinks that her older books are not as good as her newer stuff. And this one was I think from the 80s. So this is definitely one of her older books. It wasn't great, but it was interesting. The twist at the end was interesting. It was just okay. Next, I read Island Time by Georgia Clark. So this is about 2 families that are in New Zealand, I believe. I think they're in Queensland. I can't remember specifically, but they are there for a wedding reception kind of thing for their daughters who got married. And the book is told primarily from one of the sisters' point of view. And I the way this book is being marketed. It's this hoity-toity family of, I think they're Australians maybe. And then this American family that's kind of not. I think that is the dynamics. But a volcano goes off and they are all stuck there together. And I totally expected families clashing, kind of funny hijinks there. And that's kind of the story, but not really. And I gave this 3 stars. I think the atmosphere was great. And this beachy vibe was really definitely there. And the atmosphere was there. But the story was just okay. Next, we read one more of the Zoe and Sassafras books. This is something I read with my daughter. It's Merhorses and Bubbles. And we have read this one before. These are by Asia Citro. And this is magical realism for sure. Zoe is this little girl who her and her mom can see magical animals. And so they have a special door in their house that magical animals will come to when they need help. And this one is about these creatures named the Merhorses. Their food is running out. They're having a hard time surviving because there are soap pollutions in the water. So Zoe has to figure out, with the help of her Sassafras, her little cat, they have to figure out what is wrong with the water, where it's coming from, and how to stop it. And this is big on the scientific method, and definitely really promotes girls in STEM and that kind of thing. And I love that. And she also uses thinking goggles, which cracks me up. And she puts them on top of her head. She doesn't always wear them, but she puts them on top of her head so they're closer to her brain. And my daughter has picked that up, and I think it's hilarious. And so I really like these books. I gave it 4 stars. Like I said, it was a reread because she's just really loving that one specifically, but Yeah. Next is Saving Noah by Lucinda Berry. I think I've talked about this. Loved it. 4.5 stars. It is about a woman. It's mostly told from a woman's perspective. Her son was convicted of molesting young girls that he taught swim lessons to. And this is now that he's out of jail, what's going on. We also get some of his perspective while he was in jail. This book is heartbreaking. It's hard, but it's so good. 4.5 stars. Next is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez, and I gave this one 3.5 stars, and I buddy read this with Morgan from Nothing Better Than a Book, and I'm definitely in the minority in not loving this book. Morgan actually is there with me, so shout out to Morgan. And I feel like take this review with a grain of salt because, like I said, I have not been in the mood for romance. Just contemporary romance has not really been my thing lately. And this one, like, I feel like everybody's going to, like, stone me for not loving it, but I feel like they had a very physical connection and we didn't get to see the emotional connection as much as I wanted to. So this book is about, I'm already blanking on names, Alexis maybe, and she is that her name? Alexis, I think. She is driving home from a funeral and her car breaks down in the middle of nowhere. And so this guy comes and rescues her. He's like this lumberjack, small town guy. She is a city doctor from this like infamous, well, not infamous, I would say famous family of doctors, legendary in this hospital. Her dad is like, her mom and dad are both doctors. And then her brother has just recently decided to like do his own thing, go to a third world country with his new wife that they don't approve of. And so he's gotten written out and now like everything falls on her. So she is a city doctor and this guy that rescues her is just this country carpenter, kind of B&B owner, jack of all trades kind of guy. And he is awesome. He is such a cinnamon roll. He takes care of her, but she like goes to the local VFW because that's the only place to eat, and she won't eat anything there. And she's just very like pretentious, kind of. It comes off very pretentious. And yet, like, they have this connection, and she goes and says, like, I'm not going to have a one-night stand. I don't have one-night stands. If you're taking me somewhere to try to do that, like, I'm not into it, whatever. And then they do. And, like, that scene just really rubbed me wrong because it was like, I'm saying no, I'm saying no, I'm saying no. And then she wakes up and they did. And, like, I know it was consensual, and I'm not saying that, like, I didn't think it was consensual. It's just, like, furthers that stereotype of, like, women don't know what they actually want. And I didn't think it was cute. A lot of people do think it was cute in the way it happened. I just didn't. And then she continues to go back to that town to basically have booty calls. And so, like, we definitely get the physical aspect. And when she's there, he goes over the top to kind of, not really with the intention, well, with the intention of wooing her, but she's very upfront that she does not want a relationship. And so he's like, whatever, you drove all this way, I'm going to make it worth your while. And I loved him and loved that. But, like, why does he like her? We didn't get to see why he liked her. Because, like I said, the first meeting, she comes off, like, really pretentious and not great. And I don't know. Like, I feel like we didn't get to see why they had like a deeper connection. We are told that they had long phone conversations, etc., but we don't get to see that. And we don't get to see like the emotional bonding. We get to see the I'm holding you at a distance and having a booty call, but we don't get to see the rest. And like it makes sense to me why she likes him. And that's because, like, she's just gotten out of an abusive relationship. This guy's the polar opposite of the guy that she was with. This guy kind of represents everything that is opposite of, like, the stresses and pressures she's feeling. So, like, that makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is, like, why he likes her. Because, like I said, she didn't come off that well, etc. And then as the book goes on, like, there are some wonderful, adorable scenes. There are some scenes that are, like, top-notch romance and would be a perfect Hallmark movie. And if I bought into the relationship more, I would have loved those scenes. But because I didn't buy into the relationship, I didn't love it. And the ending is like a big sweeping gesture, really like dramatic and really over the top on both sides. And it could have been really sweet, but again, it ended up feeling kind of melodramatic and like just a little much. There's also 3 instances of abuse in this book, or 3 different stories of abuse. Her abuse by her father, her abuse by her ex, and then another woman in town is being abused by her husband. And I really appreciated that discussion of abuse and how it does not look the same way every time, and it can be a little bit different every time. But I didn't feel like we went quite deep enough into like how to recover from that abuse and how that abuse impacted her long term and her future relationships. And because of the lack of depth, it kind of ended up being like a Daniel saved her kind of thing. And like, because she finally found a good relationship, everything is okay, when two long stories of abuse would still leave scars. Like, therapy, some sort of discussion of that would have been necessary, in my opinion. So I don't know. I liked it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I definitely see why people are loving this, but for me, it just wasn't the best thing ever. Next is Midnight at the Blackbird Cafe by Heather Weber. And I read this for Krista from Books and Jams, her Patreon. This was the book club for the month. And I liked it. I gave it 3.5 stars. So this book is about this girl who, her grandmother dies, and part of like getting the inheritance is that she has to go run her cafe for like a month or something. So she goes, and she's not really into small towns, but this is a small town, and this one's kind of magical. So this is magical realism, where these blackbirds supposedly like will give you dreams of people like speaking to you that have died, if that makes sense. And there's a secret ingredient in these pies and things that allow you to get those messages. So she's trying to figure out what it is, because her grandma did not explicitly tell her. So she's trying to figure out, people in the town are really upset because the pies don't have their magic power. So she's trying to figure it out. And she knows that she's the only one that can do it, because it's got to be somebody from her like lineage. And I really like the discussion of grief, because there are some people who are like, need the pie every single day, and there are some people who choose never to eat the pie because they don't want those messages. And I really liked thinking through that, and especially talking through that with the book club about like, what would you do if you could get a message from somebody who has passed? Would you not? What would you do? And just seeing how people deal with death and grief and all of that was really interesting. And I thought it was really cute. There were 2 romances in this book that I didn't feel were necessary, and just kind of like cheapened the book and made it kind of cheesy when it didn't need to be. So 3.5 stars. I really liked it, but it's, again, not the best thing ever. Then I read another Zoe and Sassafras. I might have said that was the only one. We read Grumplets and Pests, another really cute one. Still love the focus on science and girls in STEM, and I will give that 4 stars. Next is To Keep You Safe by Kate Bradley. I gave this one 2 stars, and I honestly have very little memory of this book at all. It's a thriller that wasn't thrilling. It wasn't good. Just avoid it. That's all I'll say. Next is Acts of Violet by Margarita Montemore. So she wrote Una Out of Order, and I loved Una Out of Order. So I was really excited to read this. This is an arc, and this is about a magician, a famous magician named Violet. And she is just like top of the world, very famous magician. Everybody loves her. Everybody knows her. And she's like the best ever. And she disappears during one of her like biggest shows and is not to be found. And the book is told mostly from her sister's perspective and what it was like kind of living in the shadow of Violet. We also get her daughter's perspective, so Violet's niece, and her kind of wanting to know about her aunt, whereas the sister is really like doesn't want anything to do with it, kind of wants that door closed. And as they're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of her being missing, things start kind of seeming sketchy about like, is Violet really gone? Is she dead? Like, she's presumed dead, and like she was declared dead just for kind of like legal purposes. But is she dead? Is she not? Did she stage this? Did something happen to her? What's going on? And the sister thinks she's alive and just doesn't want to deal with it. And we just kind of find out. So this book, if you have a chance to listen to it on audio, I would highly recommend, because there's a podcast element. There's somebody like trying to solve this mystery via podcast. And I loved that element. I loved, like, it almost created a creepy atmosphere listening to it. There's music and sounds and things that made it super creepy. And I loved that part. I gave it 4 stars. Like, throughout I was kind of thinking 5, but then there was like a lull in the middle. And then the ending was just a little anticlimactic. Like, I wanted more explanation and I wanted more from the ending. So 4 stars on that. I still will continue to pick up anything she writes because I really enjoyed that. Next is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This one I went into with like nervous expectations because I've heard not great things, and I kind of am in the middle. I say 3 stars. It was fine. It's about this girl. She just needs a break from her life. Things are not going well. So she goes to Paris to stay with her stepbrother. Well, and this annoyed me. They call him stepbrother, but they have one shared parent. So they're actually half siblings. And as somebody who came from a blended family, I get so annoyed when like the verbiage around step and half is mixed, because I have both step siblings and half siblings, and it's annoying to me, but that's just a personal pet peeve. But she goes to stay with him for a little while, and he's like communicating, and then she gets there and he's not there. And the house that he lives in is a little sketch. So it's a like gated apartment building kind of thing, and there's one person who lives on each level. And similar to other Lucy Foley books, we get each of their perspectives. So there's a lot of perspectives, kind of a lot going on. Again, this book was just okay for me. It was a little like, kind of felt like there were like shock moments just for shock moments that didn't really like further the plot in the way that they could have. I just thought it was all right. Next is Mom Milestones by Grace Ferris. So this is, I forget, the highs, lows, and joys or something of the first 7 years. It's a graphic novel that was on display at our library, and so I grabbed it just thinking it would be a fun 30-minute read or something, and it was. I read it during my daughter's gymnastics, and it's just like a graphic novel that has really cute art, and it's just about the first 7 years of being a mom, and it was relatable. It was funny. Now that my kids are 2 and 4 and I'm pregnant, and kind of like, I feel like you kind of block out the newborn stage, and especially like once you're out of like breastfeeding, middle of the night feedings, all that kind of stuff, like I almost like enjoyed / got nervous kind of rereading those and like being like, oh yeah, that's what's about to happen. I liked it. It was not like the best thing ever, but it gave me a chuckle in the short time I had with it, and so I gave it 4 stars. Next is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. You guys, I gave this 5 stars. I loved this graphic novel. So I know I'm like way behind on the hype train. I've been on hold on my library for like ever to get this book, and I only got volume 1, and I'm like waiting for volume 2. And I even went and like, I don't like to read graphic novels digitally, but I put holds on all the digital and the physical and all the things because I've got to read volume 2 ASAP. But this is about Nick and Charlie. Charlie, I'm sorry, is an openly gay young man who went through a lot of bullying that we don't see on page, but we hear about, and now he's generally well accepted. He's got a boyfriend, a guy he hooks up with in private because this other kid is not out of the closet, and this guy does not treat him well at all. And Nick, he gets partnered with Nick like as a science partner or something, and the two of them start a relationship. And Nick is this like macho rugby guy. From the outside is like as straight as they could be. Yet the two of them form a relationship that is at first a friendship. Nick asks Charlie to join the rugby team, so they get closer through that. And it is just so sweet. So sweet. I love both of these guys. I cannot wait to see the rest of their story. And it was so good. And I've heard that I need to read at least the first 2 volumes before watching the show. Let me know if that's true, because I kind of want to read like all 4 before watching the show, but knowing the like wait times at my library, and like I've done all the libraries. I've got a Brooklyn library card. I've got our old library card where we used to live. I've got a Broward County. I've got like them from everywhere, and the wait times are crazy. So let me know if I can watch the show after I read volume 2 or if I need to wait. So that was so good. Cannot wait. And then the last one I read was Karen's Rollerskates by Anna Martin. This is number 2 in the Little Sister series. And I love this one even more. So this one I gave 5 stars as well. This is about Karen. The whole series follows Karen, which I think is really interesting because the Babysitters Club, if you've read that at all, you know that the club changes a lot. It starts with 4, then gets bigger, and people come, people go. Things change quite a bit. But these Little Sister ones follow Karen all the way. So I think that's really interesting. But Karen has roller skates, and she loves them, and she's a little cocky about them. And so she does this trick and then hurts herself, ends up breaking her wrist. And I loved the way it walked through like the emotions of like going to the hospital and that kind of stuff, how it can feel really scary, but also like how you can be brave and get through it. And then she also, like every time she tells the story of what happened, she exaggerates it more and more and more. And we end up learning kind of like the lesson of why like exaggerating and lying and telling things to like make yourself seem better is not a good idea. It was just really good. She's also like in a contest with this kid in her class that I think he broke his ankle or something. So he's got a cast too, and he got this famous person's signature. So she's trying to get all the signatures she can get to like one up him. And again, we get a good message of like why that's not necessary and why that's not cool. And so I feel like so far these books have done a really good job of being like both realistic, like this is what kids would do, but then also infusing that like morality of like, but you don't really need to worry about that stuff. And I feel like that has been really good. So overall, this has been a great second half of June. We've read some great stuff. I've read some great stuff. And I'm just loving it. So let me know how your second half of June was. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought. And that's it. Well, thank you so much for watching, and we'll talk to you in the next one.